Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are this synthesis engine for that fire hose of global information. We take this massive stack of sources, articles, research, specialized reports, and we try to pull out the crucial knowledge you actually need.
And today's archive was, well, it was a behemoth. I mean, it goes all the way from the deep history of human evolution 7 million years ago,
Right.
through the really murky ethics of our newest AI systems, and then right up to yesterday's closing bell on Wall Street, and of course, the escalating tensions in the Middle East. It was, the entire spectrum of human endeavor and conflict.
Exactly. And our mission today isn't just to summarize these things. It's to rapidly synthesize this really complex mix of scientific breakthroughs, high-stakes diplomacy, and these pretty dramatic market shifts. We're looking for the connective tissue.
The threads.
Yes, the threads. What binds these events that seem so far apart? And what are the long-term implications for you, the person just trying to make sense of a world that feels like it's speeding up every single day?
And it really is overwhelming, but when you look closely, the core narratives do start to emerge. And we found 3 huge stories that I think represent these tectonic shifts happening right now.
Okay, number one, and this one is just a stunning archaeological pivot. We're calling it Ancient Insights. The discovery of opium traces in an alabaster vase directly connected to the young pharaoh, King Tutankhamun.
And this is so much more than some ancient drug bust. It forces a massive rewrite of ancient Egyptian pharmacology.
And social history, too.
Yeah.
It suggests this sophisticated, accepted use of powerful substances among the elite, 3,300 years ago?
Unbelievable. Okay, number 2, the geopolitical shockwave. This is probably the most controversial story we're covering. The U.S. military strikes targeting Venezuela.
Which were described by some U.S. officials as an operation explicitly designed to facilitate the removal and capture of President Nicolas Maduro.
Right, and the sheer audacity of this unilateral action and then the condemnation from basically every major power in Latin America, it just signals a really dangerous, destabilizing new chapter.
And finally, a big one, the market tipping point. In the world of electric vehicles, a quiet, almost symbolic, but ultimately seismic shift happened. China's BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams,
A great name.
is a great name. They surpassed Tesla as the world's leading seller of battery-powered cars. And this move, it symbolizes a fundamental global manufacturing realignment. It's a real challenge to Western industrial dominance.
So these 3 themes, revising history, redefining military intervention, and reshaping global markets, they just perfectly illustrate how quickly the foundation of what we think we know can just completely change.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start where everything begins, with discoveries that are pushing the timeline of humanity itself and our whole understanding of our ancient past.
Let's do it.
So we're beginning with what paleoanthropologists are calling a true revolution. New research, focusing on these ancient fossilized bones, is radically adjusting the timeline of when we, as a species, first started walking upright.
Yeah, we're not talking about a small adjustment. We're talking about pushing that date back potentially millions of years.
And the core of this finding, it's that humanity's earliest ancestors began that critical evolutionary process bipedalism, walking on 2 legs approximately 7 million years ago.
That's right. And the data is centered around analysis of fossil evidence from a very early hominin species known as Sahelanthropus.
7 million years ago. I'm just going to sit with that number. For context, a lot of the previous models, they placed the definitive shift to walking upright much closer to maybe 4 or 5 million years ago.
With species like Australopithecus, Lucy. Everyone knows Lucy.
Exactly, with Lucy. So why is this evidence from Sahelanthropus so compelling that it's forcing us to just reset the clock so dramatically?
Well, it really comes down to the structural analysis of the femurs, the thigh bones that were discovered in Chad. The analysis used this really advanced biomechanical modeling to study the internal and external architecture of the bone itself.
And what did that modeling show?
It showed that for bipedal locomotion, for walking, the femur needs very specific features. Things like a strong neck and an angled shaft, to handle the stresses of balancing your whole weight vertically over 2 limbs.
So if the bone structure lines up with how modern humans walk, that's pretty definitive evidence.
That's the argument. The researchers say that the morphology of the Sahelanthropus femur is just inconsistent with the posture you'd need for knuckle walking.
Which was the other big theory, right? That they moved more like apes.
It was the major hypothesis. So by strengthening the case for bipedalism in Sahelanthropus, this research radically shifts the known timeline. It makes walking upright a foundational, a very, very early trait of our lineage, long before our brains got significantly bigger.
So it changes the whole story of why we became bipedal.
Completely. It suggests that walking on two legs wasn't, some slow adaptation to grasslands expanding, as some theories suggest. It was maybe an original feature of our divergence from the ape lineage, which is fascinating.
It really is.
And this breakthrough, it's also part of a broader technological shift in fossil science. We're moving beyond just studying the morphology, the shape of the bones.
What are we studying now?
We're studying the molecules in the bones. Researchers are now using these incredibly advanced techniques to analyze fossilized bones that have somehow preserved metabolic molecules from millions of years ago.
Wait, hold on. We're finding biological residue from millions of years ago that's actually intact enough to study? How is that even possible?
It's possible in certain highly mineralized environments. And these preserved molecules, we're talking metabolic byproducts, ancient proteins, lipids, they are offering a revolutionary window into ancient ecosystems.
So what can you learn from an ancient molecule?
You can reconstruct ancient diets with much greater precision. You can understand ancient diseases that afflicted these populations. You can even pinpoint precise climatic conditions millions of years ago.
So what kind of picture is this molecular research painting for us?
It's painting a much richer, more dynamic tapestry of life. For instance, the research is suggesting that many of these earlier ecosystems were often significantly warmer and wetter than we previously modeled.
Which means more life, more biodiversity.
Exactly. Supporting richer biodiversity than we attributed to those eras. We've even found traces of parasitic interactions, ancient worms and pathogens that we can still see in modern species, which lets us trace the evolutionary history of disease itself.
Wow. So paleontology is becoming a kind of biomolecular forensic science.
It's a perfect way to put it.
So from the deep past of human anatomy, let's jump forward a few million years to one of history's most famous figures, King Tutankhamun. We're heading to the Valley of the Kings in Egypt for a groundbreaking discovery.
And this one involves a substance that has, profoundly defined human civilization for millennia: opium.
This discovery is just monumental. Scientists found verifiable traces of opium in a 3,300-year-old alabaster vase.
A beautiful ritual vessel, too. And it's believed to have been one of the burial items of the boy king, King Tut. It was recovered from his tomb, so the provenance is, it's unimpeachable.
We've always known that ancient Egyptians were skilled in medicine. They used all sorts of herbs. But what does finding opium specifically tell us about the Egyptian elite?
It suggests pretty significantly that the use of opium was far more prevalent and accepted, maybe even institutionalized among the royal and priestly classes than conventional historians had realized.
And the analysis was specific.
Very. It confirmed the presence of opium alkaloids derived specifically from the Papaver somniferum plant, the opium poppy.
And this wasn't just any poppy.
No, this was likely derived from a specific variety known historically as opium the bicum. The fact that they were intentionally cultivating or harvesting or trading for this really concentrated, powerful substance.
It indicates conscious attention to its effects.
Exactly. This wasn't accidental foraging. This was the intentional use of a major psychoactive and analgesic agent.
So are we talking about pain relief, ritual purposes, maybe even a social drug? What are the experts speculating?
It's almost certainly a combination of all of those. As the most potent painkiller available at the time, it would have been essential for pain relief.
And King Tut, famously, had a lot of health issues. A clubfoot, malaria.
He did. So for him or any member of the court with chronic ailments, this would be critical. But the fact that it was included in a vessel intended to accompany him into the afterlife suggests a really deep cultural significance.
Right. In a burial setting, that elevates it way beyond just medicine.
It elevates it to a luxury commodity, maybe used in religious or funerary rituals, or even as a high-end social drug among the elite, something that conferred status.
And you have to wonder, if the ruling class, the pharaohs and their courts, were regularly using such a mind-altering substance.
It opens up profound questions about governance and decision-making during the New Kingdom era. How did the regular use of such a powerful psychoactive substance shape their perceived reality? Did it influence negotiations? Did it blunt the pain or terror of conflict?
It just mandates a much more nuanced view of the health and the leisure and even the socio-political practices of these ancient societies. Historians are now going to have to revisit countless texts.
It's a fundamental historical revision, no question.
Or that transition from recognizing the use of specialized substances in the past to programming AI to recognize alien life in deep space. It really captures the breadth of this deep dive. Let's turn our gaze upwards to the cosmos.
And first, for anyone who enjoys looking up, January always has some spectacular celestial events. We had the first full moon of 2026, the Wolf Moon.
Which was also a supermoon this year.
It was, which means its orbit brought it closest to Earth, so it appeared dramatically larger and brighter for sky watchers and photographers.
I always appreciate the name Wolf Moon. It's such a connection back to those ancient natural cycles, tying back to the archaeology we were just discussing. The traditional name links it to wolves howling in the cold midwinter.
And tying it to the technological present, SpaceX kicked off its year with a major launch. They executed their first mission of 2026 using their workhorse, the Falcon 9 rocket.
That was for the Cosmos SkyMed second-generation program, if I remember correctly.
That's right. It's an Italian Earth observation program, and it's focused on improved synthetic aperture radar capabilities.
So what does that mean in practical terms? What do these satellites do?
They're critical for global monitoring. They serve everything from precise environmental tracking and disaster response like monitoring flood zones or seismic shifts to strategic intelligence gathering. It really just demonstrates the growing importance of the private space sector in delivering these high-value national security and environmental services.
But the true future-forward story, the one that excites me the most, involves the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI. We are now fundamentally changing how we search.
And we're doing it by incorporating AI.
This is a radical shift in methodology, isn't it?
It is. New research is introducing machine learning and AI models that are specifically designed to detect biosignatures signs of life by analyzing astronomical data. For decades, SETI has largely focused on listening for, engineered radio signals.
Assuming life would try to signal us intentionally.
And the problem with that is that we are projecting our own assumptions about advanced life onto the entire universe. We're just looking for a mirror image of ourselves.
Right.
These new AI systems, they fundamentally decouple the search from our terrestrial assumptions. So instead of looking for familiar Earth-like signs, like a lot of oxygen, which signals photosynthesis on our planet,
What are they looking for instead?
they're searching for complex molecules and intricate chemical disequilibria.
Disequilibria. That's a great term. Explain what that means in this context.
Well, in chemistry, a natural system tends toward equilibrium, a state of balance. Life, however, constantly creates chemical imbalance. For example, here on Earth, the vast amount of oxygen we have should react and stabilize with other elements. But life plants, algae, constantly pumps it out, maintaining that imbalance. The AI is designed to look for complex chemical patterns in planetary atmospheres that statistically just shouldn't exist together.
Unless some form of biological organization, some kind of alien life, is actively generating them.
Precisely. So, if the AI detects a planet where, say, methane and oxygen exist in an impossible ratio, it flags that as a potential biosignature, regardless of whether that life uses DNA or looks like a microbe or a human.
This just dramatically expands the search parameters. It allows us to recognize life that is genuinely alien.
Following biochemical pathways completely different from our own is how technology helps us overcome our own cognitive bias in the search for cosmic neighbors.
That leap from parsing 7-million-year-old molecules in fossils to training AI to find molecules on exoplanets, it perfectly frames the incredible speed of learning that's defining our era. And that speed only accelerates when we turn our attention to medicine, to healing, and the urgent ethical questions surrounding technology.
A lot to cover there.
Our next segment takes us into the innovative frontiers of health and medicine, but it pivots pretty quickly to a current-day crisis involving one of the biggest names in tech. Let's start with the good news, the genuinely remarkable medical innovation.
The first breakthrough comes from researchers at McGill University, and it focuses on a deceptively complex part of the human body, the vocal cords.
They've developed a groundbreaking injectable gel designed to repair damaged vocal cords.
And for anyone who has suffered a serious vocal injury, you know just how fragile those tissues are. The key innovation in this new gel is its longevity and its function.
How's it different from what's used now?
Current therapies often involve materials that just break down too quickly, sometimes within days. And that doesn't give the delicate tissue enough time to fully regenerate. This new polymer gel is engineered to act as a molecular glue that remains stable and intact for weeks.
And weeks of stability provides the scaffolding that the body needs for regeneration.
Exactly. That prolonged period gives the damaged vocal cords the time they need to actually heal fully, restoring their ability to vibrate normally. For professional voice users, singers, teachers, public speakers, this isn't just a physical fix, it's a career saver.
It transforms treatment from a temporary patch to a real long-term solution.
By managing the mechanical stress of vocal use during that critical healing phase, it's a huge quality of life improvement.
It really is. And on the public health front, we have a major and critically needed victory in the fight against antibiotic resistance, specifically against drug-resistant gonorrhea.
This is probably one of the most significant public health developments of the year. The new oral antibiotic is called zoliflodacin. Gonorrhea has become a huge global public health threat because it is rapidly developing resistance to nearly all of our standard treatments.
Leaving doctors with very few reliable options.
Exactly. But a large-scale international study demonstrated that zoliflodacin is remarkably effective. It showed a high cure rate of 91% against drug-resistant strains.
How does that compare to the current standard treatment?
Well, the existing regimen, which often involves a painful, time-consuming injection followed by pills, is slightly higher at 96%. But the convenience factor of zoliflodacin is just massive. It's a single oral dose.
And that convenience matters in public health. It makes it easier to administer, ensures patients actually complete the treatment.
Absolutely. And recognizing this urgent challenge, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, has fast-tracked zoliflodacin's approval.
That's a big deal.
It is. That rapid regulatory action just highlights how severe the antibiotic resistance crisis is and how desperate we are for new, effective, and convenient agents to prevent its further global spread. We have to move quickly before these pathogens become completely untreatable.
Now, speaking of complex biological processes, let's look at aging and recovery from spinal cord injuries. The conventional wisdom was that getting older significantly hindered the body's ability to repair nerve damage.
And that assumption is being challenged by new research. The study shows that age doesn't necessarily hinder the nerve healing process itself. Older individuals often show a comparable biological capacity for nerve regrowth as younger people.
So they can regain strength and sensation at similar rates.
At similar baseline rates, yes, but, and this is a crucial distinction, it's about functional recovery. Age does significantly impact the functional recovery of complex daily activities, things like walking, dexterity, self-care. It seems the issue isn't that the nerves can't heal, but that the older brain and musculoskeletal system are less effective at integrating those newly healed nerves back into complex, learned motor routines.
So the biological repair is successful, but the rehabilitation needs to be fundamentally different for older patients.
Yes. This finding mandates a shift toward highly tailored and age-specific rehab strategies. These programs need to go beyond just stimulating nerve growth and focus intensely on functional integration, cognitive retraining, and adaptive movement patterns.
And this all ties, maybe surprisingly, into the now trillion-pound global wellness industry.
It does. How is that industry evolving in light of our, increasingly stressful and technologically saturated lives?
The trends for 2026 show a focus on two things: internal peace and processing speed.
An interesting combination.
It is. First, there's a big shift toward embracing JOMO, the joy of missing out. People are actively prioritizing their well-being, disconnecting from the constant pressure of digital life, and embracing solitude and rest. It's an act of mental self-preservation.
And the second trend?
The continued rise of nootropics, or
Yeah.
brain-boosting supplements. These are aimed at enhancing cognitive function, memory, focus, trying to keep up in this high-demand, information-dense world.
So we're simultaneously investing in protecting our mental space with JOMO while also trying to increase our internal processing speed with nootropics just to cope.
Exactly.
Now let's pivot to one of the most challenging health crises globally: Alzheimer's disease. It affects an estimated 50 million people. But new research suggests a critical new sign for early detection that could genuinely transform how we manage this disease.
This could be the game changer everyone's been waiting for, because it identifies a problem before the irreversible, catastrophic damage starts.
And what's exciting is that it uses standard MRI scans that are already common in clinical practice. The research focuses on blockages in the brain's waste disposal system.
which researchers have vividly nicknamed the clogged drains. We should explain what these drains actually are.
We're talking about the glymphatic system. You can think of the brain as this highly active city that produces a lot of metabolic waste toxins, byproducts, that have to be cleared out, especially while we sleep. The glymphatic system is basically the brain's plumbing and sewer system.
And it flushes out all that gunk with cerebrospinal fluid.
Exactly. In a healthy brain, it clears out the toxins. But the research shows that blockages or dysfunction in this drainage system, these clogged drains, are appearing as significant potential early indicators of Alzheimer's.
And they might appear before the famous amyloid plaques and tau tangles that define the later stages.
That's the key. This offers a critical time buffer. If you can detect the problem when the plumbing is just starting to clog, you have a chance to intervene.
Before significant, irreversible neuron loss occurs.
Right.
You could implement lifestyle changes, better sleep hygiene, diet, therapies.
Absolutely. And crucially, it provides a measurable biomarker for testing new drug treatments that are designed to clear those drainage pathways or disrupt plaque formation much, much earlier. It shifts the conversation from inevitable decline to potential management and delay.
It also changes how patients approach their diagnosis. It gives them a sense of agency.
And that ties into the human story here. We have this really moving story of a registered nurse who, after getting her own Alzheimer's diagnosis, found a new purpose by lecturing to nursing students.
What's her message?
She emphasizes the need to break the intense stigma around cognitive decline and to promote dignified, compassionate care from the very moment of diagnosis. Her advocacy is just this powerful reminder that this is a human crisis, not just a biological one.
And now we make a really jarring pivot from the compassionate care of the human brain to the immediate regulatory crisis surrounding artificial intelligence. This involves Elon Musk's newest AI platform, Grok.
And the ethical implications here are massive and global. This situation is so critical because it starkly exposes the immediate dangers of deploying powerful generative AI tools without robust, adequately tested safety features.
We're talking about Grok's new edit image feature.
Yes, which allows users to manipulate images using natural language prompts. And it faced severe and immediate backlash from regulators and the public, from France to India, over its rapid and widespread misuse.
What specifically was the feature being used for?
It was being misused to generate and disseminate obscene and sexualized content, specifically targeting women and children. The reports showed that the moderation and safety guardrails, which are supposed to prevent the generation of illegal or harmful content, just failed almost instantly upon launch.
And there was a high-profile case, the musician Julie Unari, that became central to this debate.
That's right. Her image was digitally manipulated with her clothing stripped without her consent, making her a very visible victim of this AI-driven abuse. And reports cited in the sources showed over 100 attempts to digitally alter photographs to depict women in compromising positions in a very short amount of time.
This wasn't minor misuse. This was a deliberate weaponization of the tool.
Absolutely. And the international regulatory response was swift and targeted. India's IT ministry took immediate action.
What did they do?
Their response was decisive. They mandated that X, the platform hosting Grok, fix the specific issue within a strict 72-hour deadline and submit a formal compliance report. They cited clear issues under India's IT Act regarding user protection. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a legally binding order.
And meanwhile, French authorities launched their own probe, but using a different regulatory framework.
Correct. They're using the EU's Digital Services Act, the DSA. They launched a full investigation, reported the matter to prosecutors for potential violations of French laws against sexual content. And more broadly, they're assessing Grok's compliance with the DSA, which imposes really stringent requirements on large online platforms in the EU.
So you have India enforcing consumer protection with a hard deadline, and the EU assessing systemic risk and accountability. It's the state exercising its right to enforce societal standards against big tech.
And how did the company XAI respond to this?
Well, this is where it gets complicated. Grok did acknowledge that it had safeguard lapses, particularly concerning child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. They committed to fixing the algorithms. But the initial response from leadership was aggressive. Elon Musk's XAI initially dismissed the critiques of Grok's outputs as legacy media lies.
That's a huge contradiction. You're downplaying a serious public safety threat while at the same time admitting to the safeguard failures that caused it.
It creates a severe accountability crisis. And This incident is serving as a crucial early case study for how global regulators are going to force accountability on these AI platforms moving forward. They're saying, your product failed to meet our societal minimums, and we will compel you to fix it.
The tension between rapid tech deployment and cautious, ethics-driven regulation is defining our decade.
It really is. And that tension is also defining our global political stage, where the pursuit of power is creating flashpoints that we haven't seen in decades. Let's turn now to geopolitics.
A lot happening there.
The biggest story in global politics, one that really harkens back to the conflicts of the 20th century, is the unprecedented and highly controversial military action taken by the U.S. in Latin America. The military strikes targeting Venezuela.
This was a deliberate, complex military operation targeting specific Venezuelan sites. And crucially, the sources indicate that this action was described by influential U.S. officials, including Senator Mike Lee and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as facilitating the removal and capture of President Nicolás Maduro.
And Maduro faces U.S. criminal charges, including drug trafficking.
He does. But the notion of the U.S. military actively intervening to effect regime change in the 21st century, particularly in South America, is profoundly destabilizing.
So what was the immediate global reaction to these strikes?
The condemnation was swift and severe. It just underscored this deep-seated regional opposition to U.S. unilateralism. Mexico, for example, publicly condemned the intervention as a grave violation of the United Nations Charter and of Venezuelan sovereignty.
They see it as a dangerous retrogressive step.
Exactly. And the instability is absolutely terrifying for Venezuela's immediate neighbors, especially Colombia.
I can only imagine.
Colombia's alarm was palpable. They condemned the attack and immediately started fortifying their 2,200-kilometer border with Venezuela. Their primary concern is the immediate fallout: mass migration, a surge in violence, and the destabilization of drug trafficking routes. It's a humanitarian and security crisis right on their doorstep.
And the condemnation wasn't just limited to the immediate region. Brazil's stance is highly significant.
Absolutely. Brazil's President Lula strongly condemned the U.S. action, framing it explicitly as imperialism and unwarranted interference in Latin American domestic affairs. This collective regional response really solidifies the view that regardless of Maduro's domestic policies, military intervention by the U.S. is just unacceptable.
And what was the official response from Venezuela?
The Venezuelan defense minister condemned the strikes as a clear act of aggression against their national sovereignty, as you'd expect. But the political schism within the U.S. on this is intense. This was not a bipartisan consensus.
Right.
That internal divide is crucial. Democratic lawmakers, including Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Betty McCollum, forcefully decried the unilateral military action as aggressive and unacceptable. Their argument centered on the constitutional necessity of congressional approval for military aggression.
Warning that acting unilaterally sets a dangerous precedent.
A very dangerous precedent for American foreign policy, potentially casting the U.S. as a rogue state in international relations.
And as this instability flares, we see other global powers rushing into the vacuum. There were reports about China actively deepening its ties with Venezuela.
And that links the Venezuela situation directly into this overarching theme of great power competition. China is positioning itself as a strategic partner to nations targeted by the West, which underscores the point that U.S. actions in Latin America have immediate global ripples, complicating relations with Beijing and Moscow.
Moving across the globe, the Middle East remains a nexus of, well, acute instability.
Yeah.
And what's shocking is the fracturing of traditional alliances, particularly in the escalating civil war in Yemen.
We're seeing nominal allies actively fighting each other. Saudi Arabia, which leads a major coalition, launched airstrikes against forces belonging to the Southern Transitional Council, or STC.
And the STC is backed by the United Arab Emirates, the UAE.
Right, so you have these two major regional powers, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, effectively fighting a proxy war through their respective factions in Yemen. This resulted in multiple casualties, and the Saudi-backed Yemeni government declared war against the STC.
What is the STC's ultimate goal here? What do they want?
They've been very clear about their separatist aims. They announced a firm 2-year transition plan toward full independence. They're seeking a referendum to establish what they call South Arabia, and they're focused on controlling the strategically vital and resource-rich Hadramaut province.
And they warn that if the Saudi-led attacks continue, they might just declare immediate secession.
Which would further fragment Yemen into 3 or 4 distinct political entities. It's a massive internal separation push. But despite the declaration of war and the airstrikes, there is still the faint echo of diplomacy.
That's the convoluted nature of this conflict.
It is. Even amid the heavy fighting, Saudi Arabia extended an invitation to all Yemeni factions, including the separatists and the Iranian-backed Houthis, for dialogue in Riyadh. It's a dual-track approach. Apply military pressure, but keep diplomatic channels open.
Meanwhile, we're seeing major domestic crises in Iran spilling onto the international stage, leading to direct confrontations with the U.S.
Domestically, Iran is reeling from a severe economic crisis. Protests are surging due to skyrocketing inflation and rapidly diminishing living standards, which is putting intense pressure on the government.
And that's where external pressure comes in, specifically from U.S. President Donald Trump, who threatened support for the Iranian protesters.
And that threat was met with a fierce, high-stakes response from Tehran. The Iranian parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Ghalibaf, issued a stark and explicit warning.
What was the warning?
He stated that U.S. forces and bases in the region would be considered legitimate targets if Washington intervenes in Iran's internal affairs or actively supports the destabilization of the regime. This is a very public drawing of a red line.
And responding to this clear escalation, Israel is actively preparing for the worst.
Yes, the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, ordered advanced preparations for a potential multi-front war. This is not routine. This is preparation aimed at simultaneously tackling potential conflicts against Iranian-backed groups and forces in Lebanon, the West Bank, and potentially direct Iranian missile strikes. The threat assessment is clearly at its highest level.
Now, moving over to South Asia, we see a massive commitment to military modernization in India, driven by acute regional threat perceptions.
Primarily from China and Pakistan, India has approved 3 colossal defense packages, totaling $30 billion. This is a focused modernization drive aiming to finalize major upgrades by 2025.
What's the focus of the spending?
It's on rapidly deploying advanced weapon systems, specifically drones, integrated missile defense systems, and early warning capabilities. And the sources emphasize that the majority of this spending is rooted in economic nationalism.
75% is allocated for local production.
Yes, and that serves 2 strategic purposes: countering immediate threats with state-of-the-art technology and simultaneously strengthening India's domestic industrial base, insulating its supply chain from external diplomatic pressures.
Finally, let's look at the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. What are the latest developments on the ground and within the administration in Kyiv?
The ground war remains brutal. Russian forces have reportedly liberated 9 towns in a continued offensive. And concurrently, the city of Kharkiv was struck by 2 Russian missiles that hit a residential area, leading to civilian casualties. The conflict is just unrelenting.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has just enacted a major leadership shakeup.
This is a highly strategic move. Zelensky appointed Kirilo Budanov, the highly regarded head of Ukraine's military intelligence, as his new top aide and head of the presidential office.
And Budanov is known for orchestrating some significant, aggressive, and effective special operations against Russian forces.
He is, and his appointment signals a commitment to a more aggressive, intelligence-led, and technologically integrated defense strategy. It's a consolidation of defense and intelligence power right at the very top.
And finally, these global conflicts and economic shocks are clearly taking a toll on Europe's stability. We have analysis from the former European Central Bank President Mario Draghi, which offers a stark warning.
Draghi's report is essentially an existential wake-up call for Europe. He warns that the continent is suffering from crippling paralysis, just unable to effectively respond to the pressures bearing down on it.
What are the primary drivers of this paralysis, according to him?
It's a mixture of compounding pressures, escalating global conflicts right on its border, significant economic challenges like increased U.S. tariffs, especially those under the Trump administration, and the controversial, unprecedented decision to indefinitely freeze massive Russian assets.
So his diagnosis is stark. Integration, not paralysis, is essential for Europe's survival.
Unify or decline, and that pressure is palpable, and it flows directly into our final segment on economic realities, where that very competition between China and the West is now defining our marketplaces and shaping the future of global commerce.
The single biggest global market story in the automotive sector is undeniable. For the first time, the undisputed champion of the electric vehicle market has been dethroned.
And this signals a really deep shift in manufacturing power. China's BYD Build Your Dreams has officially surpassed Tesla as the world's top EV seller in 2025.
And this is far more than just a sales contest. It's a massive milestone, marking the rising dominance of Chinese manufacturers in the global EV landscape.
A profound challenge to established Western industrial powers. Let's break down the data points. How large was this margin of victory?
The numbers are substantial. BYD reported annual sales of 2.26 million battery-powered cars. In contrast, Tesla's annual sales fell to 1.64 million.
And crucially, that's a 9% decline for Tesla from the previous year. It was their second consecutive year of decreased sales in the battery electric category. BYD is now winning by a margin of over 600,000 units.
And this didn't happen in a vacuum. What specific factors drove this downturn for Tesla, and at the same time fueled BYD's aggressive ascent?
Multiple factors converged. For Tesla, one major issue was the loss of the $7,500 U.S. federal tax credit for many of its models, which was a huge incentive for American buyers.
But the primary driver was just mounting competition.
It was. BYD benefited enormously from massive state subsidies, a hyper-efficient domestic supply chain, and significantly lower battery manufacturing costs. This allowed them to undercut competitors with aggressively priced, high-quality models. BYD achieved a remarkable 37% year-over-year increase in battery electric vehicle deliveries by the third quarter alone.
So, Western regulatory structures and mounting global competition hit Tesla hard, while Chinese state planning provided a springboard for BYD. How is Elon Musk, who is famously competitive, responding to losing the crown?
Well, Tesla investors seem to remain optimistic because Musk has signaled a major strategic pivot. He appears to be moving Tesla's primary focus away from just volume manufacturing and more toward future technologies.
Specifically robotaxis, which use autonomous driving, and the energy storage sector.
Exactly. It's a recognition that the mass-market EV manufacturing crown is now extremely difficult to hold. The pivot suggests Tesla believes its future value lies in software and energy grid solutions, not just in building cars.
That sets the stage for a dramatic technological competition. Meanwhile, the broader economic landscape is flashing some positive signals. The UK hit a financial milestone.
Yes, the FTSE 100 index, the benchmark for the UK's top companies, hit the 10,000 mark for the first time in its history. And analysts see this as signaling robust investor optimism and expectations of continued economic recovery after several years of global instability and, of course, Brexit adjustments.
And how did Wall Street react to the start of the new trading year?
It was a cautious but mixed opening day for 2026. The S&P 500 closed mixed or slightly higher, buoyed specifically by strong performances in key tech sectors. Chip stocks like NVIDIA and Intel are just riding that AI investment wave.
But there's also a notable rally in precious metals.
Yes, gold and silver, which often indicates a market shift towards safer assets amidst ongoing economic caution and geopolitical uncertainty. Overall sentiment remains very watchful.
Speaking of caution and market realities, we have a stark, arguably brutal statement on the modern labor market from a major corporate leader, McDonald's CEO Chris Kempczinski.
Oh, I saw this. His message to employees was a shocking dose of what he views as market realism.
His message, delivered internally but it got out quickly, was provocative. He warned employees to stop expecting an employment deal in the current market, and his core statement was, nobody cares about your career.
That's certainly one way to motivate a workforce, but what's the philosophy behind that seemingly harsh statement?
Well, his point isn't necessarily to be cruel, but to emphasize this radical philosophical shift in the labor landscape. It's driven by automation, global competition, the gig economy.
He's arguing that the traditional idea that employers are solely responsible for providing job security or a predictable career path is increasingly obsolete.
Exactly. He's urging personal accountability, saying that workers have to take greater ownership of their career trajectories, of adapting, of continuously upskilling. It reflects a harsh corporate philosophy where the burden of career longevity is shifted almost entirely onto the individual worker.
Adapt or be left behind, the ultimate corporate mantra for the age of disruption. Now, let's pivot abruptly to a tragic safety and accountability failure, the devastating New Year's Eve fire in Crans-Montana, Switzerland. This definitely demands a shift in tone.
This tragedy occurred at the Le Constellation Bar in the popular ski resort. It was absolutely devastating. It claimed the lives of 40 people and injured 119 others.
Many of them young adults celebrating the holiday, including a young Italian golfer now feared dead. It's just awful.
What did the forensic investigation determine as the cause of the blaze?
Authorities confirmed the fire was initiated by sparklers used on champagne bottles inside the crowded venue. And this detail is horrifying because it highlights a critical failure in public safety regulations about using pyrotechnics in confined indoor spaces.
Especially ones with highly flammable decorative materials. The speed of the spread is always the deadly factor.
Always. And the response from Swiss authorities regarding accountability has been severe. The 2 French bar managers are now facing a comprehensive criminal investigation.
The charges include negligent homicide, negligent bodily harm, and negligence leading to a fire.
It emphasizes that reckless behavior regarding venue safety will face immediate legal scrutiny. And the emotional toll on the community is immense, marked by this harrowing waiting period for families.
Particularly for the 6 injured victims who remain unidentified for days, and the ongoing trauma for the families of missing teenagers. It just reminds you that behind every headline about a tragedy is profound human loss.
Absolutely.
Finally, let's look at a few critical incidents concerning crime and public safety, starting with a significant terror plot thwarted in the U.S.
The FBI successfully prevented what they described as a mass casualty attack in North Carolina. They arrested an 18-year-old Christian Sturdivant in Mint Hill.
He had pledged allegiance to ISIS, and the plot was uncovered by undercover agents who gained access to his detailed plan.
A plan chillingly titled New Year's Attack 2026. It outlined his intention to stab at least 20 individuals at a public gathering, a swift, critical prevention that potentially saved dozens of lives.
Elsewhere in the U.S., police were investigating a shocking double homicide in Columbus, Ohio.
A dentist and his wife were found shot dead in their home just before their 5th wedding anniversary. Tragically, their 2 young children were found unharmed but traumatized. Police are actively seeking suspects.
And we have a notable legal development from Wisconsin that involves the ideological conflict over immigration enforcement.
Judge Hannah Dugan resigned from her post following her conviction for obstructing an arrest. The arrest was related to an immigrant who is attempting to evade federal authorities.
And this high-profile case just highlights the increasing tension and ideological conflict within the judicial system regarding immigration enforcement and how judges interpret their duties in these politically contentious scenarios.
It really does. The pace of global events, whether it's 7 million years in the making or happening in real time, is just relentless.
We've covered enormous ground today. I mean, from the 7 million year timeline of human bipedalism being rewritten to the discovery of opium in King Tut's tomb that changes Egyptian history, all the way to the modern-day speed of disruption.
We saw that immediate technological instability in the Grok AI crisis, a product launched without sufficient ethical safeguards, and massive geopolitical instability with the U.S. military strikes on Venezuela, which drew severe international condemnation.
We also saw the critical urgency in our health sector, from antibiotic resistance to the potential of identifying Alzheimer's early via those clogged drains of the glymphatic system.
And that market story, the story of BYD overtaking Tesla, it really summarizes this clash between East and West. It shows China achieving massive consumer manufacturing dominance at the exact moment Washington is trying to draw national security lines around critical technological supply chains.
And that juxtaposition, that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider this week. We noted that the Chinese company BYD has dethroned Tesla, demonstrating unmatched manufacturing scale and aggressive market penetration in the EV world.
And at the same time, we know the U.S. government has, citing national security concerns, forced a Chinese-linked firm, HiFo, to divest its U.S. semiconductor assets.
So on one hand, China is dominating the consumer electric sector. On the other, the U.S. government is actively forcing economic decoupling in the core technology sector, the chips and semiconductors that power everything.
So given this growing tension, is economic decoupling in these critical sectors truly inevitable? And if the U.S. and China move toward a permanent market bifurcation, one completely separate supply chain for the West and one for the East, how will that fundamentally change global consumer access, availability, and pricing for everything from cars to phones over the next 5 years?
Will we see 2 entirely different, non-interoperable technological worlds emerge? The world is separating, and the choices being made now will define the market you shop in for decades. We'll leave you to chew on that one. Thank you for joining us for the Deep Dive.
Until next time.
You're enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.